Hi, welcome to the show. I'm Maggie.
I'm Mike.
We are friends on fire.
And we are on a mission to get friends to talk about money.
Okay, Mike, usually we try to read a voicemail or a listener comment. We haven't really gotten a lot of voicemails lately or texts, so I don't have any to read, but we would love if someone actually wants to call us and leave us a message. Question, tip, comment, whatever you want, just say hi to us. That'd be awesome if you want to. Number's 404-981-3370. Okay, you want to jump into the topic today, Mike?
Sure, let's do it.
So I have named tonight's episode Mike Explains the Economy because Mike's going to attempt to explain the economy.
I feel like you are setting me up to fail here. That is a very lofty expectation for our listeners.
How hard could it be?
I will do my best. But I will point out that I got a C- in undergraduate economics.
Did you really?
I did.
I got an A+. I don't think there was a plus was a real thing, but I got an A.
Well, in that case, I would like to introduce everybody to Maggie Explains the Economy. Take it away, Maggie.
Mike, I got an A in every class I took for the most part, which I only feel the need to say because we've had a discussion about how terrible I was at high school sports. So I just feel like I need to redeem myself by letting you know that I was good at some things.
Point taken. All right. Let's talk about the economy. We usually talk about personal finances, and you guys have heard me compare things, personal finance decisions, to how a CEO or a CFO would make that decision. And I think it would be interesting to look at the way CEOs are actually making decisions for their company and how it relates to or can be understood by way of your personal finances.
Mike, I think it's worth kind of giving some context of why we want to have this conversation right now. We felt like this is such a unique time in the world and in what's happening in the broader macroeconomic environment that it would be interesting to actually talk through what's happening and why those things are happening. Because it's just such a unique time in the world.
And if you listen to the news, there is probably a disconnect between what you are hearing about the economy and hearing about the virus. So, situation, as of recording this episode, 26 million people have filed for unemployment claims.
26 million people just in the past 4 to 5 weeks, right?
That's right. And for comparison, during the recession in 2008, the highest number of weekly new unemployment claims was like 500,000. We are seeing 5 to 6 million people file for claims a week. It is staggering.
Per week. That is crazy.
And while all this is happening, the stock market just fell off a cliff. The biggest drops I've ever seen in my lifetime, but then rebounded almost back to their original levels just as quickly. And so I'm sure people are looking at what's going on in the market and just being utterly confused by what is happening. Maggie.
I sure am.
That yawn.
Sorry, did you just see me yawn? Sorry.
Just,
it's not the topic, man. It's just, it's late. You know, I'm tired.
You were just like regularly yawning on video right now. Just, can you pretend to be interested in what I'm talking about?
This is what I used to do during Econ 101 in college, too.
Oh, and you still got an A?
Yeah.
See, I also fell asleep and then got a C-.
Nice. Okay, so the economy, something about something.
We are unsure how long this is going to last, but consumer confidence is down. Maggie, you got to stop yawning.
Sorry.
And while this is unprecedented in its nature, all bear markets, all declining markets are unprecedented. If they were...
Hey, Mike.
What?
Hey, Mike, what's a bear market?
Bear market, when it goes down. No, that doesn't make that noise.
Okay.
Bull market, when it goes up. Bear market, when it goes down. So all bear markets, all downturns are for unforeseen events. If they were foreseen, we would combat them and the market wouldn't drop. But it certainly feels like a crazy time.
So, Mike, one of the things that you have done in the past when you've done some different presentations at work and that we've just talked about this topic before is you actually compare running a company to running your own household and personal finances. And I love how you kind of make that comparison, because I think it's a really interesting way to bring some of these points home for people. Home, no pun intended.
Sure. You can think of a company like your household, like your personal financial situation. You make decisions based on an expectation of cash flows. The mortgage is going to be the best example of this. You borrow money and you expect to be earning money in the future with your job so that you can pay this off. You don't have the money today, but you are making decisions on what to go buy and what trips to go take because you believe that every 2 weeks you're going to get a paycheck. That's your cash flow.
Yeah, and that's also how lenders are making decisions on money they're going to loan you, like a mortgage or a car loan or anything. They're looking at your anticipated cash flow and thinking, this person seems like they'll be able to pay this debt back.
Exactly. So you borrow money and then you can go buy things. You can make investments. You can go invest it in the stock market. You can go buy a new house. You can go buy a new car. You can buy things for your family. You can buy people gifts. And so you have this expectation of future cash flows, and then you use that cash to improve your life and to be fulfilled, which is different than a company. Companies don't look for personal fulfillment and satisfaction. They look for growth. But your personal financial situation would be the same way. It's just your objective is different.
I would actually say, I know this is not your point, but some companies and some leaders do look for some level of personal satisfaction. Maybe less so public companies, but never mind. Cut that out. It's not helpful. I should probably quit talking now.
Yeah, thank you. So companies are the same way. Companies have real estate. They have supplies. They have employees, like you have family members. And all of these things are based on an expectation of cash flows. When that cash stops, the decisions on what to spend or what they can maintain is changed. And so when people lose their jobs, it forces them to cut back their spending. They choose not to go out for dinner. They choose not to buy a car because they don't have the money. When a company starts losing paying customers and their cash dries up, they can no longer pay their employees. They can no longer reinvest in their business. They have to lay people off, and that is what we're seeing. 26 million people have been laid off because companies don't have as much cash as they thought they would to sustain their business.
Well, they didn't realize how much cash they would need because many of them were not expecting a global pandemic to just halt their business, right?
Yes, that's right. Now, this is where companies and households are different. Households have an incentive to hold cash. We call it the emergency fund. We talk about it all the time. Companies have a disincentive to hold cash, especially public companies. They have requirements from investors to grow. And so having cash sitting around doing nothing is not good for them. And there is no reason to think that there would be a global pandemic that would keep people in their homes and they couldn't spend money. Like, this is not something that companies plan for. So it's a very low risk event, which we are now seeing the repercussions of. But a few things on cash. When companies have excess cash, so what we call free cash flow, after they have all their revenue, they cover all their expenses, what is left over after they've paid their bills is free cash flow. There's a handful of things that companies can do. They can reinvest in their business. From a personal finance perspective, this would be like renovating your house. Increases the value of your house because you're making it nicer. Maybe it allows you to do something different with your lifestyle. You can pay money back to your shareholders through dividends. So you can take your excess cash and you can donate it. You can give it to your family as gifts. You can acquire something. A company can make an acquisition of another company. On a personal finance perspective, you can go out and buy a new house. You can go buy a new car. Companies also can pay down debt. So they borrow money, typically to go make large purchases or to shore up certain elements of their business. And if they have extra cash, they can pay that down. And it's just like what Maggie, you and I did, where we paid off our mortgages. We had excess cash. We wanted to eliminate that expense and we paid it down. And then the last thing you can do is do stock buybacks. And I don't exactly know what the personal finance equivalent of this one would be, but if you've been listening to the news, I'm sure you've heard about stock buybacks. And I'd like to hand it over to Maggie to explain to us what a stock buyback is.
Mike, there's something wrong with my microphone. I'm not sure what's going on, but it's just not quite working. So I might need you to cover what stock buybacks are. I really wish I could. Sorry.
I know. I will take this one for you. Stock buybacks are a little bit controversial because they do nothing to change the underlying business. A company takes cash and buys back outstanding shares of their company from investors in the open market. This benefits the company because when they are purchasing it, it increases the value of the shares. So the way the stock market works is the more people are buying, the higher the stock price grows. It's a supply and demand issue. The company then has these shares, which they've inflated the price for. And if they retire the shares and take them out of circulation, then you have more earnings divided by fewer shares. And so the earnings per share have increased for the company. This really only benefits large shareholders of the company and mainly the executives. There is nothing different about the business. It doesn't improve the underlying business operations. It just inflates the stock price. And so airlines, for instance, have come under a lot of heat because they have no cash. They have to lay off their employees. They're asking for a government bailout. But they have spent billions and billions of dollars on stock buybacks, which has done nothing but put them into a situation where they need a government bailout. I got a little bit off on a tangent. I didn't mean to spend so much time on stock buybacks, but perhaps it's interesting.
Well, hey, you said you couldn't think of a personal equivalent of a stock buyback.
Oh, hit me.
What about, I've been thinking about this for like 2 minutes since you started. What about going to grad school? It's kind of like a stock buyback for myself. Like I'm reinvesting in myself. No?
No.
No? Not biting?
No,
Okay.
because that's reinvesting in the business. You are spending money to change your skills and make you more effective and desirable in the workforce.
Yeah, okay. Okay, keep going.
You can continue to tune me out and yawn on camera and think of another equivalent to what stock buybacks are.
Thanks.
So all this is to say, companies have very little reason to hold cash in an emergency fund. And so right now, just after just a couple weeks of consumers not going to restaurants, not buying goods, companies are laying off their employees. I mean, it is just terrifying how quickly these companies have basically run themselves out of business. And Maggie, you and I have talked a few times on this show about how there's many people in the United States who couldn't cover a $500 expense if it popped up, or couldn't go more than a week without a paycheck. And that seems like a really unfortunate, terrible situation, but our companies are the exact same way. The proof of this, 26 million people unemployed.
Yeah, it's a great point. So if all this terrible stuff is happening and unemployment's so high, companies are running out of cash because revenue is down or stopped for many companies, why is the market doing so well over the past few weeks?
The short answer is that the government has stepped in with a rescue package the likes of which we have never seen before. So they've done a few things. The first is that they have dramatically increased unemployment benefits. So even though 26 million people are unemployed, for many of them, they are making as much or perhaps more than they made while unemployed because the temporary window of increased unemployment benefits is so high. So if the fear is that people lose their jobs and stop spending money, then the market is going to react to those people being made whole through government intervention and say, well, they're going to be earning just as much. They will resume their same spending habits immediately, or there will be no change. The other is that businesses can now get very low interest rate loans, small businesses and large businesses. And so companies who have a cash shortfall, even though they still don't have revenue, they can get a loan to cover those expenses. And so the company wouldn't need to go out of business or lay off as many employees. Whole sectors of industries are getting bailouts, like airlines. So essentially, the Fed is flooding the U.S. economy with liquidity to make sure that people
Mike,
have cash. Yes.
Who's the Fed? Did you say Fred?
No, Fed.
Fed is flooding the economy?
Yeah, it's some guy named Fred who just has a lot of cash. The Federal Reserve, or otherwise known as like the Central Bank of the United States, has the ability to create money. It is different than printing money. So a mint prints money. The Fed is what regulates the economy. They can create or destroy money. And the way it works essentially, and I wish you hadn't asked me this because I still don't fully understand what the Fed does. So if anybody is an expert on the Fed and would like to call in and talk to us about how the Federal Reserve works, please do so. And please come and correct me if I'm wrong.
It's going to be a riveting discussion. I can't wait for them to call in. I'll be standing by the phone lines waiting to answer your call.
What the Fed does to create money, or to quote unquote print money, as people are saying on TV, is that they will go and buy different assets. So like buy securities from other banks, but they don't have cash in a bank that they give. They just create the number and then give it to the bank. And so in that way, they are digitally creating more money in the economy and then buying these assets and giving these other entities, these other banks, money. Those banks have gotten cheap cash. They then give it to other businesses and consumers at very low interest rates. Think lower mortgage rates. And those consumers and businesses then use that money to, in theory, go reinvest back into the economy. The reality is that this only impacts the stock market and the very wealthy. So it's not like when the Fed creates money, the hourly wage worker who just got laid off is getting any of this. It has to trickle down to them.
Yeah, trickle down. I'm following you.
But this is just like you and I taking a personal loan. Yes, we have more cash and we can cover our expenses, but this doesn't change the fact that we are out of a job or that the business is closed, that they're not producing anything, they're not selling anything, people aren't going to restaurants. And so we have a ton of liquidity to prevent a catastrophic meltdown and bankruptcy of the entire economy. But the problem still exists. People cannot leave their houses. Businesses cannot open.
This always feels to me, and if this is too unintelligent of a statement, please cut it. But this always feels to me like we're propping up the economy with fake money, right? And how long does that last? There's no real value being pumped into the economy right now.
You're absolutely right. We are pumping money into the economy on the hopes that people use that money to actually create a stronger economy in the future. And just like stock buybacks don't do anything to improve the underlying business, pumping liquidity into the economy does not change the problem. It just
pushes it out.
It just pushes it out in the hopes that things resolve themselves. If the virus has a vaccine tomorrow and everybody can go back to being totally normal, then this would be a great success. The economy would then continue to skyrocket. But I think the problems are going to be prolonged, and the economic fallout of this is going to be significant and last for many years.
Okay, so this is all incredibly interesting, Mike, and I hope people have found it educational and, just feeling like they've learned a little bit more around how the economy works and the current situation that we are in as a world, and also just that we are in personally. What does this mean for people now? Hearing all of this, what am I supposed to do now?
That's a great question. So it's sort of a, what does it all mean?
Yeah, it's like the questions I see on everything lately are should I be buying more now if I can afford to, putting more money into the market? Should I be taking everything else out? And I know you're not going to give me personal investing advice here, and we try to avoid giving those specifics in general, but just what should people be doing right now?
It all comes down to what you believe. Do you believe things are going to get better, or do you think they're going to get worse?
Are they going to get better or worse, Mike?
I don't know. It depends on the day, how optimistic or pessimistic I feel. But I believe there's a lot more bad news than there is good news.
Ahead, you mean?
Ahead. And I think things are going to get worse before they get better.
I would agree. If we're making bets on predicting the future, I'll put my money on that same statement of it's going to get worse before it gets better. But it will get better.
It will get better eventually. And there could certainly be some great buying opportunities in the stock market. Things that have gotten hit very hard and you think are going to go back up quickly. However, we're not just talking about a stock market situation. You also have your personal health to be worried about. You have your job to be worried about. And so if it was just a matter of taking a risk in the stock market, maybe you should go buy some stuff right now because maybe it's a great buying opportunity. But it's likely the stock market's going to go down. It's likely the pandemic's going to get worse. Things are going to stay closed a lot longer. And there just seems to be a greater likelihood that things are going to be bad for a while. And so my personal opinion is to maintain a very defensive posture in the near term, which means being very careful about your health, not taking any risks in the stock market, not getting back in when you don't need to, and being very careful about trying to keep your job as much as you can. So I am trying to be very defensive for what it's worth.
Okay. I would agree. I'm trying to do the same thing. I know we talked about that a bit on the episode around, pretending like you've already lost your job, which I think is a, very defensive approach. Or offensive. I get confused about defense and offense. That might be why I was so bad at sports when I was a kid.
Oh, nice. Self-burn.
It's confusing.
That was good, Maggie.
Yeah.
Are you just trying to beat me to the punch now?
Just trying to join in, right? Yeah, you got to make fun of yourself before other people can make fun of you. I learned that strategy when I was sitting on the bench. Okay. Some of this might feel like a little bit of a downer, right? Like we're sort of sharing a lot of the less than positive news of what's happening in the economy and in the world right now. You got any good news to share with us today, Mike?
I think the good news is that for the first time in my life, I've seen the world united in a common cause. And it's something that it doesn't matter what country you're from or what race you are. Everybody is going through the exact same thing. And it's a very uniquely unifying event, which I think is going to have some profound positive impacts on the world for a long time to come.
That's a great point, Mike. I know we've talked about it a little bit on the podcast, but just the way you're seeing people come together and the unity that comes from us all going through the same very odd and surreal circumstance together as a world is really kind of bringing out some very positive sides and creativity and humor and levity from a lot of people. And yeah, it's just a great point. Way to look for the silver linings.
All right. Should we wrap up with some key takeaways?
Yeah, sure. So our top 3 takeaways from this episode.
I would like you to do all 3, Maggie, to see if you were paying attention.
Oh, shit. Okay, I think you really want me to do all 3? I think I could do it.
Go for it.
This is like a test in school. So our top 3 takeaways from this discussion. Number 1 is the starting point Mike made that companies are very much like your own personal household in the sense that they spend money based on the expectation of a future cash flow. So there's a lot of things you can learn about your own personal finances from the way companies are run and or vice versa. Number 2, companies do not have an incentive to keep cash because of investor demands, but you do. That's something new I learned tonight, Mike. I just really hadn't spent a lot of time thinking about companies' incentives and disincentives to hold too much cash on hand, comparing it to our own personal finances. So well done. Learned something new. Number 3, this is a tough time in the world. This will be tough. Many of us are taking pay cuts, and we've done a whole episode on this, episode 22, Live Like You've Lost Your Job, where, we are encouraging people to take a very defensive approach and to not take risk right now with your health or with your money because, we've got some tough times ahead and we believe and are very confident things will get better, but we do both think things are going to get a little bit worse before they get better.
Well done, Maggie.
Yeah, thanks. I was paying attention. Plus we had notes, so that helped. Okay, should we switch to Mike's Minute on the Mic to wrap this up? Oh,
because I haven't talked enough on this episode?
Yeah, I got a good question. This is actually a question I want to personally know, so
okay.
I think I'll learn something, and so will our listeners. So remember, this is where I get to ask Mike a question, and you have 60 seconds to answer. So Mike, where do you consume most of your financial and economic news from? Like, what are your top websites, resources, etc., that you like to read and stay up to date on things on?
I get all my news from Yahoo Finance, and it's much like any
Yahoo!
other.
Finance? Sorry, go ahead.
Yes.
Remember the old commercials?
Yeah, but that wasn't how it goes.
Okay.
Try it again.
Something like that. No, I'm not going to do that again.
Okay.
Keep going.
All right. So I do Yahoo Finance. I like the layout. I like the way they aggregate information. They have a good way that I can like look at different stocks that I'm tracking. I also subscribe to The Motley Fool, which I only did very recently because I was interested in kind of how they were evaluating some of their stock picks. I had very good success with a couple of them and thought it was worthwhile to invest. But all of these news sites are going to be the same. They all aggregate from the same sources. The important point about this is that you need to take everything with a grain of salt. You're going to see an article that says the economy is going to crater. You're going to see an article that the economy is going to triple in value. And you need to figure out what you actually believe based on your own understanding of what's going on. So it doesn't matter where you get your news. It's more about how you sift through and figure out what's real and what you believe in.
Okay, I like it. One quick thing just to add to that, Mike. Hang on a second. I got to change my mic real quick. I was looking this up.
Yeah,
that was the official Yahoo yodel.
I like yours a little bit better. Can you do yours again?
Yahoo! Is that good? Did I break any glass?
I think you broke the microphone. All right. Well, we have certainly gotten well off track.
Yeah, that's my goal.
Mission accomplished. If you have any questions or comments, please call us or text us at 404-981-3370. Leave us a question or comment, and we will play it on the air.
You can also follow us on our social handles on Instagram or Facebook, which you can find links to at our website, friendsonfire.org.
And please leave us a review on iTunes or wherever you listen to this podcast. It really helps other people find our show.
Well, thanks, Professor Mike, for the economy lesson. We appreciate it.
This was fun. I enjoyed this episode. Thank you.
Yeah, glad you got to be in your element. You know, you let me have my minimalism discussions. I'll let you have your economy discussions.
Aw, thanks.
Everybody will be happy in the world.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Bye.
All right. Thanks, Maggie. Bye.
Bye.